Welcome to Sisters for Financial Independence, where we cover topics related to money, motherhood, and everything else in between. We are going to get right to it today. In today's video, I am going to share with you straightforward budgeting tips to help you budget better and manage your money for long-term financial independence. This video is part of our budgeting series. If you want more budgeting tips, check out this playlist for our budgeting series. My first tip for you today is to understand the difference between budgeting and accounting. While those words are interdependent and those processes are interdependent, they are two different processes for managing your money. Budgeting is the act of making a plan for your money before you spend it. It is a forward-looking process for planning and control. Accounting, on the other hand, is keeping records of where your money was spent. Unfortunately, for many of us, we are actually not budgeting. We are accounting, meaning that we are working on managing our money after it has been spent. A budget at minimum puts a target limit on spending categories for a set period of time. In other words, a budget will have two components, a time as well as a value. So for example, you might have a clothing category, but what you're going to do in your budget is set a value of perhaps $100 for the month of October to spend on only clothing category. So that means you are setting a limit on the amount that you'll spend on clothing. This is how you control your spending on all of your categories for living. Now, a budget of $100 on clothing for 1 month might seem like a lot or a little. But if you are constantly doing a budget of $100 for clothing every month, that means at the end of the year, you would have spent $1,200 on clothing. If you are wondering where that money is going, I want you to look around. A budget helps you control spending and overspending in certain categories. Now, you do still need to go to the accounting side to review your past financial performance. This means that you will need to look at your bank statements as well as your credit card statements to see where you have spending your money. Now, facing this reality can be daunting, but it will be necessary to help you figure out a budget and a spending plan that works for you. There is a high likelihood that you have been overspending in certain categories without you realizing it. Of course, as you are looking at your past spending patterns, don't get too hung up on it. This is your call to action to make a change today and budget better for more control for the future. Next tip is to make your budget specific and realistic. Saying I'll spend less this month is not a budget. But if you say I'll spend no more than $700 on groceries, $1,500 on housing, etc., that is going to be specific and realistic, and it will make sure that you reach your goals better. Now, if you also put down a budget of $5 for food for the month, that is not realistic. Most often, we need to go to the accounting side. We need to review our past statements to figure out a realistic view of the budget we need to plan forward. Over time, you might need to adjust your budget as you get better at estimating, as you really understand your living expenses, but you want to make sure you are putting numbers that are specific and realistic. Because if you put a number that is not realistic and you go over it, it will lead to you thinking that you are failing or making a mistake. So it's not going to be right the first time you make a budget, and you might overestimate or underestimate, but the more you do it, the better you will get at it. The next tip is to make sure that your budget covers your most basic living expenses. This is what is called your bare bones budget. Now, if you are not able to do this, it is time to face the true reality that you will likely need to increase your income. At this point, cutting expenses will no longer be possible. Increasing your income will be your only solution to reduce the stress and get you on a positive financial path. Face the true nature of your budget so you can make changes today. The next tip is to make sure your budget is written down, whether it's on paper, a spreadsheet, or an app. It needs to be available as a reference and a guide for yourself and your spouse so that you have it when you are making purchasing decisions. Now, basically, you need to look at your budget every so often and see if the dollar amount is available for you on what you want to purchase. Otherwise, what happens is that we end up guessing and we end up overspending on those categories. Now, a copy of your past budget can then be used to inform your next month's budget. But you still need to sit down and figure out what your expenses are for the month to help you figure out the right budget for the new month. If you are coupled up, you and your partner need to have access to that budget. Both of you need to be referencing it for that month so you know what you are spending your money in. It is important that both of you be accountable for all of the things you're spending against your budget. Discussions will happen, maybe some arguments will happen, but this will allow you to refine your budget as you move forward. My next tip is to start with an annual budget. This means at the beginning of the year, sit down and map out your expenses. If you have a partner, you and your spouse need to sit down together and do an annual budget together. The goal is to understand what and how you will be spending your money. Majority of budgets fail because many of us aren't planning enough. We go on vacation because we deserve a break, but we haven't planned and saved any money for it. So we end up overspending or putting it on credit cards. Christmas comes every year, yet many of us are still surprised at the cost and the debt that comes with it. We know that our kids need summer camp for the summer, so we need to be planning ahead for it. A budget that works requires planning ahead for all expenses. Budgeting should not just be a monthly endeavor, but a continuous process where you are looking at your expenses, income, values, and the needs of your family. All of this is going to change. You want to have a budget that is flexible. Doing an annual budget can also just help you see the big picture. Let me relate back to that example of clothing budget. Now, if you assign $100 to clothing each month, at the end of a year, that's $1,200 on clothing. That's a significant amount. However, without proper planning, we often end up frittering that $100 that adds up to $1,200 at the end of the year. If you want some help with how to do an annual budget, you can check out this video so you can map out your expenses for the year and have a plan of action starting in the new year. My next tip, now that you have those big annual expenses accounted for, is to start adding categories to your monthly budget to include these savings and sinking funds. We always want to plan forward when it comes to our budget. Unfortunately, most emergencies are actually known expenses. We just don't know the when part. When I worked as a project manager, we always had this quote around: a lack of planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on mine. The more we plan, the less stress we will have about our money. For example, if you know that your kids need camp for the summer, you need to start saving for it. So what you might want to do is put in a monthly category of summer camp where you are going to start putting in a few $100 each month so that you have it ready when it's time to register. Now, this is an expense that you know is coming up that you're planning ahead for. Now, there will be other expenses that you just don't know the when part. This might be that you need tires for that 10-year-old car that you have. This might be you need a new water heater for the 10-year-old water heater that's in your basement. Those are expenses that are going to come up in the future. The likelihood of them happening is 100%. You just don't know the when. So you also need to start saving money for that. It might be small amounts over time, so at least you are not caught off guard when that expense happens. In the end, money is fungible. You can always move things around, but knowing that you have funds for certain things can provide you peace of mind. It may be that you will now have a lot of categories in your budget, but for certain months you are either budgeting a very low amount or zero as you account for your other expenses. The goal is to not forget about all of these potential expenses and make sure you plan forward. By default, your monthly expenses should come from your income, and all of these other larger expenses will come from savings withdrawals. If you need a savings account to help you with these kinds of buckets, Ally and Capital One provide a way for you to create separate savings accounts as well as naming conventions so you can have a visual of where your money is going and know that you have saved specific amounts for certain future expenses as well as these almost emergencies that you're planning for. My next tip is, if you are not a technology person, don't use an app. Stick with plain notebook and pen, or if you know spreadsheets, use a spreadsheet instead. I know it's 2024 and technology is all around us, but if there is a pain point to you using some kind of technology, using an app, and there is a high learning curve, what happens sometimes is that you get distracted or you get frustrated at needing to learn something new. Go with what works for you. Let it be pen and paper. Let it be a simple spreadsheet, but work with something that you can use today. You can always just refine it as you figure out your needs, as you become a better planner for your money. Don't just default to whatever is free. Don't just default to whatever is available. Find one that works for you, because then you are likely going to use it. The next tip is to understand the two-sided coin that is automated payments. Now, automated payments is good for you because it can help ensure that you pay your bills on time, and it can automate your savings transfers so you always hit your money goals. But automated payments is bad for you also because businesses rely on you forgetting that this feature is turned on, which allows them to continually charge those subscription fees that might be eating up your budget. For anything that is an absolute need, I definitely recommend that you turn on automatic payments. It can save you time and money. If you have credit card debt or other types of loans, use the automated feature to ensure that you pay your minimum payments on time. Doing this ensures that your credit history remains positive with no late payments. You could always go back to pay more to pay your debt that much faster. For things that may be a want, I would recommend that you disable the automatic payment feature. If you really believe it's an absolute necessity, you will make sure you manually pay for it. But if it's not an absolute necessity, you might just let it go and not have it charged, and you lose that service, and likely you will not miss it. So just look at the two-sided coin that is automatic payments and figure out how to use this feature to your advantage so it's better for your budget. My next tip is to know thyself and know thy spouse. Now, we all have tendencies, and it becomes very obvious when we are budgeting with someone else. So I want you to understand some of your personality traits and the traits of your spouse, as this will affect how both of you look at money, manage money, and spend money. It can really be helpful to understand the perspective of your spouse as well as knowing yourself so you can communicate better when it comes to money. There's 3 personality traits guides that I want you to look at. I want you to see where you are, where your spouse is, so you can better understand each other. The first is the Myers-Briggs personality test, where you can learn more about yourself and understand why you behave the way you do when it comes to spending and saving money. There are free tests online that you can take to get an idea of where you stand when it comes to your personality trait. The second is the 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin, which gives you insight on how you meet internal and external expectations or demands. It can give you an idea of what motivates you. And the last thing that I want you to look at is to see if you are part of the ask culture or the guess culture. This can inform perhaps the way you communicate or ask for certain things, or maybe you are one of those people that guess and assume certain things, which can lead to a conflict. Knowing some of your traits can help with motivation, communication, and accountability. And it can help you and your partner have better discussion when it comes to spending money, saving money, and just general money topics. For example, I am an introvert and my husband is an extrovert. And what that means is that for our budget, we need to find a balance between putting money towards fun stuff so he can get his energy fill, and for me to be able to have some quiet downtime. So that helps us understand why we want to spend money in certain areas and why we don't want to spend money in certain areas. So it can be helpful to get that perspective for yourself as well as the rest of your household. Let me know in the comments if any of these personality traits guides have helped you have a better money management at home. It can be helpful to have these discussions with your spouse so that you are meeting in the right place. The next tip I have for you is to always split your expenses according to the categories that make sense for you. Here's what I mean by that. We often shop at Costco where they sell everything from steak to sweatpants. Now, it's so easy to grab everything because of the price, convenience, and everything else, but it can lead you to overspending. So what I would recommend that you do immediately is to review your receipts and categorize your expenses. Split them up. So if I buy a $15 sweatpants for my daughter, that's going under the clothing category. If I buy supplements, that's going under health. So you want to make sure you are seeing your expenses based on the categories that you have defined. The goal is to be accountable for everything that you buy. If you don't have a budget for clothing, or you have hit your clothing budget, then you shouldn't be spending your money on that at all. Oftentimes, we get caught up in the sales and marketing of it all. A good deal might be hard to pass up, but if it was not in your budget in the first place, meaning you did not plan for it at the beginning, it probably wasn't that important. So you might need to wait until the next month where you can budget for that specific item. Next tip I have for you is for those who love data. Now, at the beginning of the year, you did your annual budget. But also, once the holidays has passed and the busyness has subsided, I want you to sit down and gather all of your spending data. We're going to do some accounting reporting to help inform your budget. Download all of your credit card and debit card statements, review your spending logs, and you are basically going to create summaries for your household. These are called spending summaries, and it can help you just see where your money went and if that is what you want to be spending your money on. What I personally like to do is do summaries of how much we spent per category, how much we spent per retailer, and if you have it, how much you have spent per person. Some of this will be based on the data that you have or you've entered, or the data that's important to you. But it can be super helpful to see where your money is going. I've done this several times in the past, and last year I saw that we spent way too much on Amazon. And of course, I'm looking around our house and I'm seeing a lot of unused things, knickknacks. And what I realized and found that we were defaulting to Amazon for a lot of things. If we thought we needed something, we bought it immediately, and that led us to a larger amount of spending on Amazon. So what I decided to do, of course, after speaking with my husband, was to cancel Amazon Prime. That created this extra friction and barrier for us to be able just to buy anything. And can I tell you that we're almost at a year without Amazon and we are doing fine. We still buy on Amazon, except we just are more intentional with our purchases and we are more slow when it comes to buying things because we're thinking about it, we're waiting for it, and really needing to see if it's important. We've done this for all other retailers, and I think you might be surprised to find how much you spend at specific retailers. If you have teens or other kids at home, share them your findings. You might not need to share all the numbers, but percentages can help. Having them look at a graph that they've spent more at Starbucks than maybe going on vacation can help them see what they want to change in the next year as far as spending, as far as values spending as well. What do you want to be spending your money on? Do you want to be spending your money on coffee, or do you want to be spending your money on experiences? This all goes back to really focusing and spending your money on the things that bring you value. I only have a few more tips to share with you. If this video has been helpful, give it a thumbs up and share it with a friend. Hopefully someone else can get value out of it as well. The next tip I have for you is to look at all your credit cards and tally up all of your credit card fees. This means annual fees, late fees, interest that you've been paying that have accumulated over the year, and see if having a credit card is worth it for you. Oftentimes, we do get caught up in the allure of credit card rewards and points, cashback offers, and etc. without truly reviewing if what we are paying in fees is worth it. This might be the time to create some buffer in your budget by canceling credit cards, removing those fees from your budget so that you are not wasting money on those fees. Eliminating fees will provide room in your budget, but it might also lead you to reduce spending since you are no longer relying on credit cards. Now, the next tip I have for you is to carry cash. I know it's 2024. You can basically pay with your palm. You can do a lot of things without using cash. But I do want you to get into just this practice of carrying something with you that you have to let go. What happens when we pay by cash is that we activate the pain center in our brain, and it makes us question a lot of our spending. It means we get more intentional when we have to let go of that cash. It means that we might be able to slow down our spending and reduce impulse buying, which can be a boon for your budget. Cash can also be a good thing if you frequent certain establishments that offer cash discounts. Not only will you save money paying cash, you also save the business that you frequent. I also carry cash with me if I am with my daughter because I also want her to see that when I buy something, I have to give up something. I have to exchange it for cash. Oftentimes when we just tap, swipe, all of this, our kids don't know that a bill comes later on at the end of the month that we have to pay for. And I want her to attach that when we buy something, we give up something for it. The next tip I have for you is to always budget each utility and other fixed expenses. Even though these are fixed expenses, nothing truly is fixed. A lot of companies might change their rates, and by continuously budgeting this month to month, you are going to see patterns in those costs right away. And if that's the case, you can call up your service providers, you can call up that company and try to negotiate those rates back. Remember that it's always easier for a company to retain an existing customer than to get a new one. So if, as you look at your budget, you are seeing increases in a lot of your fixed expenses, this might be the time to go back and renegotiate those rates. Tell them you are a long-time customer. Tell them you have been paying your bills on time. And let's see what they can do to help you reduce those fixed expenses and provide you more margin and cushion in your budget. And my last tip for you in this video is to make sure you budget for the fun stuff. Now, adulting is hard, and a budget should not be about deprivation. It's about planning and control of your money. And you can plan to do good stuff with your money. You can plan to go on vacation. You can plan to go to a nice restaurant. You can plan to eat well. Just make sure it is part of your budget and you're doing that ahead of time. That way, when you finally spend your money, you are not going to worry about overspending. You are not going to worry about going into debt. Budget for the fun stuff and enjoy life. You work hard for your money. You should be able to enjoy it, enjoy the finer things in life, and make sure you and your family are also enjoying life today, but also planning ahead for the future. I hope this video has been helpful. Thank you so much for tuning in to Sisters for Financial Independence. My name is Catherine Agapjan, and thanks for listening to me talk about budgeting. If you are in credit card debt and want to pay it down quickly, this video has tips to help you do that. If one of your categories of overspending is food, then this video can help you with tips to lower your food waste, get you cooking more at home, and make sure that you are spending money in a way that serves you. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next time. Bye.